sekarang ni kita rasa begitu selesa sangat. Harapan kita ialah supaya apa yang diwar-warkan dengan projek loji yang mesra hijau, kita harapkan bahawa persekitaran kita menjadi aman dan damai. Anak-anak kita boleh hidup dalam keadaan sihat, warga-warga Mas kita boleh hidup dalam keadaan ceria. Jadi kita sangatlah berterima kasih kepada pihak kerajaan kan.
Loji yang dulu orang kata tak moden. Loji yang sekarang ni nampak canggih lah. Masa mula-mula dia nak buat dulu memanglah banyak dia punya proses dia. Kita orang jalan teruk. Tapi bila dah cantik macam ni, seronok lah. Orang panggil kita orang ni PPR. Apa ni, bukan PPR Cempaka, PPR Loji. Sekarang ni saya tengok dia orang yang datang pun.
Tengok sekarang ni nampak memang menarik, cantik kan. Teratur, susun semua cantik. Masa tu kat sini, sekarang dah siap, najis tu tak ada bau dah. Harapan saya semoga terus berkembang maju lah kan. Semoga terjagalah loji ni dengan baiknya, dengan majunya lah.
Saya rasa orang kata dalam yang terbaik di Asia.
kontraktor yang tidak bertanggungjawab membuang sampah ke dalam Sungai Klang menjadikan sungai berkenaan bertukar lokasi lambakan sampah.
Menurut JS, pasukan unit penguatkuasa industri yang menjalankan siasatan mendapati air sungai itu berwarna hitam selain mengesan bau busuk seperti mana aduan itu.
Air sungai menjadi hijau dan menyebabkan gatal-gatal. Itu antara situasi yang dihadapi 20 keluarga yang menetap di sepanjang Sungai Cepot Cemor.
The Dutch are well known for their expertise on water management. To advise on urgent water issues and their prevention anywhere in the world, a Dutch risk reduction team can rapidly be deployed for a short-term mission. This team of experts advises governments in case of disasters like flooding, water pollution, or drought as a result of, for example, climate change. Through the Dutch embassy, a national government can request the assistance of DRR team. Next, it will be assessed whether the water problem is urgent and whether the country will be able to follow up on the team's recommendations after the mission. The team consists of top experts from the Netherlands who research the situation on the ground. They speak with local experts, stakeholders and authorities. They also assess the role of local private and public parties. After the short-term mission, they produce a report with recommendations and sustainable solutions. The Dutch embassy supports DRR team during the entire process. This way, Dutch Risk Reduction Team enables us to share Dutch knowledge and expertise and work together all over the world on solving and preventing urgent water problems.
It's truly a sight to behold, the Afsluitdijk. This world-famous dike, which spans almost 20 miles, was the brainchild of hydraulic engineer Cornelis Lely. Lely's plan was to close off the Zuiderzee, the large coastal inlet that had put the Netherlands under the threat of flooding for centuries. On the 28th of May 1932, the final gap in the dike was sealed. The Netherlands was now protected by a huge dam that doubled as a causeway. Salt water turned into fresh water. The Zuider Zee became the IJsselmeer, the largest freshwater basin in Europe. Gigantic scouring sluices discharged excess water from the lake into the sea, and still do today. The Afsluitdijk has put us on the map, and perhaps even kept us on the map.
Hier ligt hij dan, die mooie Afsluitdijk. Nog steeds veilig, maar niet veilig genoeg. En dat gaan we komende tijd aanpakken. Een storm die eens in de 10.000 jaar voorkomt, daar moet deze dijk tegen kunnen. Je moet dan een beetje voorstellen, is het water wat nu daar laag in de Waddenzee ligt, vele meters hoger en golven kunnen over de dijk heen slaan. En hier op het zachte kant van het talud, de zachte toplaag, is het kwetsbare punt van de dijk. Je kan de dijk blijven verhogen, maar wij hebben ervoor gekozen om de dijk overslagbestendig te maken. Dat is een innovatieve methode en nog een stuk voordeliger ook.
The inner slope of the dike, which is made of sand, is built on boulder clay and topped with a layer of clay, which in turn is covered with grass. However, in superstorms, this surface layer may wash away when water breaks over the dike. As a result, primary material may also be washed away, which weakens the dike. The solution is to make the slope erosion resistant by strengthening the top layer with concrete blocks or asphaltic concrete. The slope is finished off with a layer of grass to maintain a natural look. This is called overtopping prevention. Besides flood control, the Afsluitdijk has another important function. The scouring sluices help us regulate the water levels in the IJsselmeer.
Overtollig water in het IJsselmeer wat afgevoerd moet worden. En daarvoor hebben we een tweetal spuitcomplexen. We zijn hier bij de spuitcomplexen bij Den Oever. Daarnaast hebben we in Friesland bij Koornwerderzand nog zo'n spuitcomplex. Het is alleen nog onvoldoende de spuitcapaciteit. En daarom gaan we hier in Den Oever, in deze complexen, gaan we een aantal pompen inbouwen, zodat ook in de toekomst het water van het IJsselmeer voldoende afgevoerd kan worden. Rijkswaterstaat zorgt ervoor dat de dijk tot tenminste 2050 weer veilig is. En daarnaast biedt het kansen om in samenwerking met de regio en met marktpartijen te kijken wat er nog meer mogelijk is.
Nu Rijkswaterstaat de Afsluitdijk gaat opknappen, hebben wij als regio, de 2 provincies en een aantal gemeenten gezegd: wij willen kansen pakken om meer te maken van de Afsluitdijk, om er echt de nieuwe Afsluitdijk van te maken. We denken daarbij ook aan plannen op het gebied van duurzame energie, aan een hele mooie Blue Energy Pilot, waarbij je gebruik maakt van het verschil tussen zoet en zoutwater om energie te maken. En we denken dan ook aan de toepassing getijdencentrale. Daarbij wordt gebruik gemaakt van het stromend water in de spuisluizen om daar ook energie mee op te wekken. We zijn ook aan het kijken naar natuur, een stukje toerisme ontwikkelen. Op die manier zijn we met de regio en met Rijkswaterstaat schouder aan schouder aan de gang om van de Afsluitdijk de nieuwe Afsluitdijk te maken als een icoon van duurzaamheid.
The Afsluitdijk's overhaul will start in 2017. When Cornelis Lely did his pioneering work, sustainability and innovation will be key, aiming to make the new Afsluitdijk the latest pearl in the crown of Dutch water management.
don't let this quiet scene in the town of Broek in Waterland fool you. This picturesque village is on the front line of a water war the Dutch have been waging for 1,000 years. Our cover story is reported by Martha Teichner.
These windmills were built nearly 300 years ago to pump water out of the surrounding farmland. But the Dutch have been at it for far, far longer, outsmarting the water that's everywhere around them. It is a matter of survival. 26% of the country is below sea level. This massive storm surge barrier was completed in 1997. It protects Rotterdam, Europe's largest port.
They're as big as an Eiffel Tower in Paris, but then on its side.
The man describing this colossus is Henk Ovink.
I'm water envoy for the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which means water ambassador.
The Dutch are the world's go-to water management experts. Ovink spent 2 years in the United States working in areas hit by Superstorm Sandy.
I said, could you think about preventing the disaster? And he was like, preventing the disaster? No, we couldn't. No, we have to make sure that we respond faster. And I said, but suppose that there is no disaster because you prepared better.
Who doesn't know the fable about the little Dutch boy who plugged the hole in a dike with his finger and saved his country? What really happened taught the Netherlands about preparedness. A ferocious North Sea storm in January 1953 flooded 500 square miles and killed more than 1,800 people. The Dutch built themselves a fortress of flood protection. Today, the Netherlands considers itself protected against a 10,000-year storm, in part thanks to research done by Deltaris, a gee-whiz kind of place with the largest wave machine in the world.
This is an experiment facility where we can test coastal structures, so structures that protect the coast from waves.
Op van Dongeren is a coastal flooding expert with Deltaris, which has worked with clients in 140 different countries.
Northern California is a big project for us,
including the United States.
In all of the designs that you're doing, are you assuming sea level rise?
Yes, we are. And that will come with higher waves, so you have to figure that all into your design.
Sea levels here are expected to rise more than 3 feet by the end of the century. This projection prompted the Dutch government, so used to walling water out at all costs, to rethink and let the water in instead.
And for the Dutch, this is a revolution. The idea that you're safer by lowering the dikes, this is extraordinary.
In her latest book, journalist Tracy Metz, a longtime Netherlands resident, tells the story of how the farmers of Overdiepse Polder voluntarily agreed to give up their land so that it could become a spillway for a nearby river when it floods, in order to protect cities and towns downstream.
The old farm stond there.
There.
Yes. And the river is there.
For Noel Goeiemeyers, it was a sacrifice with a silver lining. Huge mounds were constructed so that he and a few of his neighbors were able to build brand new farms, high above the floodplain.
So you're happy, not angry.
Everybody here is happy, yeah?
Learning to accommodate water has led to innovation. For example, a 24 million ton pile of sand dumped off Holland's south coast, called the sand engine. Nature was the engine that spread it into a flood barrier and a beach.
Is the Dutch model applicable?
Oh, I think parts of the Dutch model are.
Jim Murley is the man in charge of confronting Miami-Dade County's water issues and has consulted Dutch engineers.
Just the way they go about thinking about managing water, how they use their land, creates a mindset.
In South Florida, flooding has become a regular occurrence. According to current estimates, sea levels here will rise as much as 6 feet by the end of the century. At stake, trillions of dollars of real estate and more than 7 million lives.
We want to be sure that this facility will withstand a storm surge.
At a vulnerable Miami area wastewater treatment plant, critical infrastructure is being rebuilt higher. In Miami Beach, streets are being raised 2.5 feet. A new art museum in downtown Miami is designed so floodwater can flush through its foundation.
We're starting to think about how we might develop in the future if we are having to live with water like the Dutch are.
Like Rotterdam, where there's a floating conference center surrounded by floating trees. And Amsterdam, with its whole neighborhood of floating houses. Jasper Dijkshoorn and his wife Sietske Jacobs bought theirs 5 months ago.
It's weird having the water right out the window.
Yeah, it is, but on the other end, it isn't. You're in a house.
She doesn't mind that the baby's crib is underwater. The house is moored to a dock.
So what happens if water level rises? Does the house just
Yeah, the house
come
goes
up?
up. Yeah.
To him, as a Dutchman, the water is a fact of life.
And you like living with water all around you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's calm. It's very peaceful.
It's in our veins.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're pleased to present for you the 4th Malaysia-Netherlands Water Dialogue hosted by the Ministry of Environment and Water and the Netherlands Embassy in Malaysia. The conversation today will be centering on solutions for water pollution. I'm pleased to pass the stage over to the moderator to start this dialogue session.
Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon. Thank you, Ms. MC. You are here today with me, ladies and gentlemen, on the 4th Malaysia-The Netherlands Water Dialogue brought to you by the Ministry of Environment and Water and Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon, managing water pollution and integrated solution approach is the theme of the Malaysia-The Netherlands Water Dialogue. As the 4th session, water is crucial for life and uniquely vulnerable to pollution. And we have an outline of esteemed speakers representing Malaysia and the Netherlands that will entice you on different topics this afternoon. Some 80% of the world's wastewater is dumped, largely untreated, back into the environment, polluting rivers and many water bodies. Accidental or illegal releases from sewage treatment facilities, byproducts of agricultural sewage activities and runoff from urban areas have contributed activities, harmful chemicals, and pathogens into the waterways. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us now invite His Excellency Art Jacobi, Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Malaysia, for his welcoming speech, followed by the opening speech of Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Tuan Ibrahim bin Tuan Man, the Minister of Environment and Water, Malaysia.
Datuk Sri Tuan Ibrahim Tuan Man, Minister of Environment and Water of Malaysia. Mr. Henk Ovink, Special Envoy for International Water Affairs, the Netherlands. Datuk Seri Ir Dr. Zainu Ujang, Secretary General, Ministry of Environment and Water. Panelists from Malaysia and the Netherlands, moderator and colleagues. Good afternoon and welcome to the 4th Malaysia-Netherlands Water Dialogue on the theme Managing Water Pollution, an Integrated Solution Approach. The Netherlands Embassy has a long and profound relationship with the water sector in Malaysia. And since the first Water Dialogue organized in 2018, the objectives remain the same: to foster collaboration, discussion, and knowledge exchange between experts from both countries on topics related to the water sector. This virtual discussion is a way for us to stay in touch and to share knowledge with our colleagues during this special time. Too much, too little, and too dirty. These are the three main issues that we are faced with in the water sector. Too much water causes floods. Too little water causes drought. And too dirty water is largely due to pollution caused by human activities. Water is one of the most precious resources on Earth, and yet we often neglect our responsibility in protecting it. Activities from the agricultural sector, accidental or illegal releases from commercial and industrial facilities, and runoff from urban areas are just some examples of how harmful chemicals and pathogens entered into the environment, thereby polluting rivers, lakes, and oceans. This widespread problem of water pollution is harming human health, and it may be useful for everyone to reflect on the severity of this issue. The pressure on the environment is huge everywhere, and it is hard work for the water sector alone to manage a good functioning water system. Therefore, we need to work together across the water supply chain for a water secure future for everyone. The Netherlands has a long history of water management, and we believe that only by connecting all partners with practical experience, theoretical knowledge, and innovative technology, the best solution can be designed to overcome water pollution in both countries. I hereby wish you a successful discussion session. I thank you for your attention.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man wala. Terima kasih puan pengacara majlis yang berbahagia, yang terutama Jacobi, Duta Besar Belanda ke Malaysia, Tuan Han Ovings, Duta Khas Kerajaan Belanda mengenai urusan air antarabangsa, yang berbahagia Datuk Seri Yang Senior Dr. Zaini Ujang, Ketua Setiausaha Kementerian Alam Sekitar dan Air, Tuan Moderator dan para panelis dialog, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan sekalian. Alhamdulillah, syukur pada Allah Subhanahu wa taala atas segala kurniaan nikmatnya yang tidak terhingga dan luas kurniaannya kepada kita semua. Kita diizinkan untuk bersama-sama dalam suatu program yang amat bermakna, iaitu Dialog Air Malaysia-Belanda kali keempat, bersempena dengan Malaysia International Water Convention 2021 atau MIWC 2021. Program ini turut disiar secara langsung menerusi International Green Tech and Eco Product Exhibition and Conference Malaysia atau IGEM 2021. Terima kasih kepada pihak penganjur yang sudi menjemput saya selaku perasmi bagi majlis yang sangat bermakna ini. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan yang hormati sekalian, Al-Quranul Karim dalam surah Ar-Rum ayat 41 memperingatkan kita semua sebagaimana firman Allah Taala, "Zaharal fasadu fil barri wal bahri bima kasabat aydin nas liyuziqahum ba'dallazi amilu la'allahum yarji'un." Maksudnya, telah berlaku kerosakan di daratan dan di lautan disebabkan tangan-tangan manusia, di mana timbulnya keadaan tersebut kerana Allah hendak merasa kepada manusia sebahagian daripada apa yang mereka lakukan. Mudah-mudahan semua mereka akan kembali yang insaf dan membetulkan kesilapan tersebut. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan sekalian, pencemaran dan sabotaj terhadap alam sekitar yang dilakukan oleh tangan-tangan manusia akhirnya akan terpalit kepada kehidupan manusia dan haiwan seluruhnya. Kesan yang dialami akan menyebabkan manusia menanggung keperitan dan kesengsaraan hidup yang tidak terperi. Tindakan ini tidak boleh dikompromi. Justru usaha membudayakan kesedaran, penggubalan dasar dan penguatkuasaan undang-undang mesti berjalan seiring agar kelestarian alam akan terus menjadi wacana utama dalam kehidupan rakyat sehari-hari. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, penganjuran MIWC 2021 adalah platform terbaik untuk menonjolkan peranan Malaysia sebagai hub pengurusan perkhidmatan air di rantau ini. Penglibatan lebih 40 syarikat nasional dan antarabangsa serta lebih kurang 400 peserta dalam konvensyen ini adalah suatu pengiktirafan terhadap negara kita. Tahniah dan terima kasih. Tema dialog pada kali ini ialah Managing Water Pollution in Integrated Solution Approach. Merupakan suatu tema yang sangat relevan serta selari dengan peranan KASA dalam melestarikan pengurusan sumber air dan alam sekitar. Saya optimis perkhidmatan air yang diurus secara bersepadu akan menghasilkan sistem yang cekap, efektif dan sistematik, terutama dalam menangani masalah pencemaran sumber air. Tidak nafikan, insiden pencemaran sumber air mendatangkan kesusahan kepada rakyat. Selain daripada itu, ia juga menyebabkan kerugian ekonomi dan lebih teruk lagi, melibatkan maruah negara di mata dunia. Ia perlu dilaksanakan secara menyeluruh dan melibatkan kerjasama rentas antara pihak kerajaan persekutuan, kerajaan negeri, pertubuhan-pertubuhan kerajaan, pemain industri, institusi profesional dan juga orang awam. Justru penganjuran dialog air Malaysia-Belanda kali keempat ini wajar diiktiraf sebagai suatu wahana percambahan fikiran, pengalaman, teknologi dan kepakaran antara negara. Selain daripada itu, secara komersialnya, saya juga menganggap dialog ini juga berpotensi untuk meneroka peluang-peluang perniagaan dan pelaburan baru yang memberi keuntungan kepada kedua-dua pihak. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan sekalian, saya kagum dengan kreativiti Belanda dalam menangani isu pencemaran sumber air, antaranya pengajuran plastik tourism atau pelancongan plastik yang bertujuan untuk membersihkan terusan kota Amsterdam daripada sisa buangan plastik. Tidak ketaluan juga jika dikatakan Belanda sangat terkenal dengan barisan kepakaran teknikal dan timbunan hasilan penyediaan air yang sangat bermanfaat di seluruh dunia. Malah, saya dimaklumkan ramai jurutera Jabatan Pengairan dan Saliran JPS mendapat latihan intensif daripada Institut Pendidikan Belanda seperti Universiti Teknik DAF atau TU DAF dan IHE DAF Institute for Water Education atau IHE DAF. Tahniah dan terima kasih di atas sumbangan yang telah diberikan. Selain itu, dalam bidang pendidikan, saya mencadarkan agar Institut Pendidikan Air Kebangsaan Malaysia atau ringkasnya NAHRIM dapat menjadikan kerjasama dengan KWR Water Research Institute untuk menjalankan penyidikan dan inovasi sektor air. Kerjasama ini boleh dimeterai dalam bentuk memorandum persefahaman ketika Expo Dubai 21 nanti. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan sekalian, strategi KASA dalam menangani isu pencemaran sumber air adalah menerusi pendekatan struktural dan bukan struktural. Bagi pendekatan bersifat struktural, KASA menerusi agensi Jabatan Pengairan dan Saliran mewujudkan pelan pengurusan lembangan sungai bersepadu atau Integrated River Basin Management (IRBM). IRBM ini memberi penekanan kepada 4 aspek utama, iaitu memastikan kecukupan air, kebersihan air, kekurangan risiko banjir dan kelestarian alam sekitar. Selain pada IRBM, pihak Jabatan Pengairan dan Saliran Malaysia juga menerbitkan Manual Saliran Mesra Alam atau Urban Stormwater Management Manual for Malaysia pada tahun 2020. Manual ini merupakan satu kaedah kawalan di peringkat punca yang melibatkan kawalan kuantiti seperti banjir kilat dan kawalan kualiti seperti pencemaran yang menjadi syarat kelulusan suatu pembangunan yang melibatkan infrastruktur saliran oleh semua agensi persekutuan, negeri dan pihak swasta. Bagi pendekatan bukan struktural pula, KASA memberi penekanan kepada pembudayaan, kesedaran dan perubahan sikap masyarakat terhadap penjagaan sumber air berdasarkan prinsip nature-based solution. Pendekatan ini juga turut melibatkan kebersamaan masyarakat secara lebih menyeluruh. Contohnya, KASA sedang membina dan menyelenggarakan denai-denai sungai yang kini telah pun menjangkau lebih kurang 200 km dan akan berusaha bagi mencapaikan sasaran kita 5,000 km menjelang tahun 2025. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan sekalian, KASA juga membuat pindaan kepada Akta Kualiti Alam Sekeliling 1974 dan Akta Industri Perkhidmatan Air 2006 sebagai langkah punitif ataupun langkah akhir ke arah penjenayah alam sekitar. Dan kita telah pun menubuhkan UCJ, Unit Jenayah Alam Sekitar, bagi menangani isu ini. Jumlah denda dan tempoh hukuman penjara akan dinaikkan setimpal dengan kesan buruknya ke atas kehidupan rakyat dan kerugian ekonomi negara. Saya jangka pindaan-pindaan kedua akta ini akan dapat dibentangkan di Parlimen pada tahun 2022 nanti insya-Allah. Banyak lagi sebenarnya inisiatif yang akan diperkemaskan, termasuklah aktiviti penguatkuasaan, penggunaan peranti teknologi terkini, kerjasama dengan pihak Kementerian Dalam Negeri dalam pengurusan unit cegah jenayah alam sekitar dan pemerkasaan aktiviti sukarelawan dan yang lebih sistematik insya-Allah. Pendekatan holistik yang akan dan sedang dilaksanakan oleh KASA akan mampu melestarikan air dengan lebih berkesan. Sehubungan dengan itu, tuan-tuan sekalian, saya dengan penuh harapan besar agar kedua negara Malaysia dan Belanda memperolehi manfaat besar dalam mencari solusi tuntas bagi permasalahan yang akan berlaku. Dan saya mengucapkan tahniah dan terima kasih kepada semua pihak yang terlibat dalam menjayakan dialog ini secara langsung atau tidak langsung. Semoga dialog ini berjalan dengan lancar dan mengundang redha Allah Subhanahu wa taala, dapat mencampakkan idea-idea yang bernas bagi mencari usaha ke arah kelestarian sumber air negara. Dengan lafaz Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, saya dengan ini merasmikan program Dialog Air Malaysia-Belanda kali keempat bagi tahun 2021. Semoga dipermudahkan oleh Allah Ta'ala. Siru ala barakatillah. Terima kasih semua pihak dalam menjayakan usaha ini. Sekian. Aqul qawli hadza astaghfirullahalazim li wa lakum. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Terima kasih semua.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, our heartiest thanks and gratitude to His Excellency Art Jacoby, Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Malaysia, for his welcoming speech, as well as Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Tuan Ibrahim bin Tuan Man, the Minister of Environment and Water Malaysia, for his opening remarks. Without further ado, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for the special addresses by Mr. Henk Oving, Special Water Envoy for International Water Affairs, the Netherlands, and Yang Berbahagia Datuk Sri Engineer Dr. Zaini bin Ujang, Secretary General, the Minister of Water, Environment and Water Malaysia.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon in Asia and good morning in the Netherlands. It's a pleasure to give a special address at today's event, the 4th Malaysia-Netherlands Water Dialogue. And it's great to see that the water dialogues between our both countries continue. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected the world in a way we haven't seen. It's still there, and scientists expect the virus might become endemic. The pandemic has reminded us that water is at the heart of our society. Lack of access to safe water and sanitation, combined with too much, too little or polluted water, is creating unprecedented cascading risks and vulnerabilities. So, in our response to COVID-19, we must prioritize access to water for personal hygiene and better health. Learning to value water will unlock these synergies and accelerate the action we all are working on. It will bring about better health, improved food security, more effective climate action, and less migration. Building resiliency through action on water, especially for the most vulnerable, will directly affect economic health and stability worldwide. That is why the Netherlands continuously urges the international community to step up their game and accelerate the implementation of Sustainable Goal 6 and the other water-related goals of the 2030 Agenda. Water is an essential enabler for coping with the effects of climate change, and therefore we have to involve all stakeholders. SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework is clear on this point. And to scale up concrete actions by different actors in the areas of finance, data and information, capacity development, innovation and government, we must become radically inclusive. We need integrated approaches, new partnerships and a long-term strategy in order to achieve real and sustainable progress. The Netherlands hosted the Climate Adaptation Summit in January 2021, and a lot has happened since.
During the summit, the Adaptation Action Agenda was launched with new and enhanced actions in all sectors of adaptation, such as water, infrastructure, nature-based solutions, finance, cities, food, and local adaptation. Furthermore, the Adaptation Action Coalition, to further the work of the Action Summit 2021, was launched, and from the 6 founding members, it increased to over 35 member countries working on water, infrastructure, and beyond. The recent IPCC report, Climate Change 2021, but also the extreme weather events around the globe, underline the urgent need for adaptation action more than ever. As Inga Andersen said after the launch of the IPCC report, adaptation and mitigation need to walk hand in hand in order to reach a sustainable solution. The United Nations Conference on Water in 2023, co-hosted by the Netherlands and Tajikistan, will give a voice to all stakeholders so they can meaningfully contribute and take part in determining and developing the process as well as the content. Multi-stakeholder participation is required to make commitments, share lessons and experience, and form partnerships at all levels. Consultation and dialogue, increasingly participatory engagement and partnerships will help us find cooperative solutions and actions and deliver the benefits for all of us. Water is a basic good. It integrates social, cultural, economic, and political values. It's a cross-cutting theme that supports the achievement of many of the Sustainable Development Goals because of its close links with climate, energy and cities, the environment, food security, poverty, gender, equality, health, and many, many more challenges. In short, water is a pillar of sustainable development, and we need to understand the complex relationships and interdependencies, value water holistically and sustainably, and manage water inclusively at all scales and across all interests. Then water can be the deal maker, the real leverage for sustainable development and climate action. Water is amazing. It brings together all stakeholders to the same table, forging coalitions and finding the best solutions that can be scaled up and replicated across the world. In the run-up to 2023, the Netherlands will make every effort to mobilize all these stakeholders, partners and coalitions, and to focus our programs and investments on achievement of the SDGs. But we need you to spread the word and get everyone moving to act on water. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good morning. Thank you Mr. MC, Yang Berhormat Datuk Seri Tuan Ibrahim bin Tuan Man, Minister of Environment and Water Malaysia, Yang Berhormat Datuk Dr. Mansur bin Haji Osman, Deputy Minister of Environment and Water Malaysia, His Excellency Als Jacobi, Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Malaysia, His Excellency Mr. Henk Ovink, Special Water Envoy for International Water Affairs, the Netherlands, moderator, panelists, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank for inviting me to speak this morning. The title that I'm going to speak about today is about the water pollution in Malaysia, and we're managing from an integrated solution approach. Let me first thank the Kingdom of Netherlands for partnering Malaysia for this fourth water dialogue. The previous theme was in 2018 when I was Secretary General at the Ministry of Energy, Green Technology and Water, was benefiting from the Dutch approach in water management. And in 2019, we had the sharing the best practices on water management in Malaysia and in Netherlands. 2020, enhancing better environment sustainability through water innovation. And this year, our topic will be on managing water pollution and integrated approach. Let me share with you the situation that we are forecasting on water stress by country in 2040. Netherlands will be considered as medium to high risk. and then Malaysia is considered low to medium risk. So in terms of risk, the Netherlands has bigger risk than Malaysia. In terms of, say, for example, rainfall per annum, in Netherlands, it is on average of 700 millimeter, whereas in Malaysia, on average, it's more than 2,000 millimeter. So in terms of quantity, we don't have much problem. The issue now is on quality. Therefore, today we are talking about water pollution issue that we would like to learn from countries like Netherlands to handle it. So from Malaysian perspective, water sector can be divided into two. One is federal and states. If I can share with you, water services policy has been adopted fully last year in Malaysia, in Peninsular Malaysia. The framework is called Water Services Industry Act 26. Sabah and Sarawak is not yet opting for that. On sewerage operation and maintenance, the whole local authorities in Malaysia, in Peninsular Malaysia to be specific, are already within the WASIA framework. Then we had IWK in the Water Consortium as the operator. And in Sabah and Sarawak is still under local authorities. In terms of water supply coverage, overall Malaysia is more than 96.7% now. In Peninsula alone is more than 99.5%. And we had some issues in rural area in Sabah and Sarawak. So average in Sabah and Sarawak is about 95% coverage. Centralized sewage, we have facilities quite well developed in Malaysia. Probably this is the biggest achievement of Malaysia in terms of providing water services, which is centralized sewerage in urban area, which is about 79.5%, more than 80% in Peninsular Malaysia, and less than 50% in urban areas in Sabah and Sarawak. In terms of capital investment on water, it is depending on water operators. In Peninsula, in Sabah and Sarawak, is still under federal loans or grants. And as far as water resources, the whole states in Malaysia are receiving federal grants. So the question we are discussing today, we have to understand the profile and the spectrum of Malaysia water sector overall. So I think there are 5 major issues that I'm going to address this week in my keynote address during Malaysia International Water Convention. One is on governance. Second is on financial models. We have very clear models for water services and water resources, but water security is still not well developed and well defined, I would say. Water efficiency is something that we would like to discuss very much now to reduce wastages, to increase revenues for water operators in particular. And we want to put in place climate resilience to ensure that climate action is also taken very seriously by water sectors. And finally, I'm going to talk about public participation, which I think is very obvious in countries like Netherlands, where we would like to learn from. Let me ensure that in terms of planning, we have already various documents on table. Recently, I think that this is the most recent is Environmental Sustainability in Malaysia, 2020 to 2030 by Ministry of Environment and Water. And we clearly define what is required to be embarked on, what investment should be, framework should be adopted and whatnot. So in particular, on climate change, this is a new subject that I have already indicated. We would like to understand it from a quadrant of sustainability and opportunity. It's not only to be sustained, but also we would like to benefit from education, innovation, career, business development in relation to climate change. Therefore, sustainability framework that we have is not only mitigation to reduce carbon, to increase carbon sink, but also to have some kind of adaptation. And we know that water sector is the highest in terms of risk in relation to adaptation in countries like Malaysia, where we have a lot of flooding issues, coastal erosion and whatnot. And if we look at it at low opportunity but high sustainability, this is what we call green lifestyle. Green culture is all about. And we would like to go beyond that by benefiting from opportunities available. As I mentioned, in education, in innovation, in career development, in business development, under the pretext of circular economy. So circular economy should also be in the framework of water sector, not only in the framework of industrial manufacturing, agriculture, or other areas. So the key points that I mentioned, there are 5 key points. The 5th key point I mentioned was about public participation, which is very important. We know that we can have a lot of planning done, a lot of strategy being identified. We can implement a lot of initiatives. Say, for example, as I mentioned, in terms of sewerage coverage in urban area, Malaysia is one of the leading. Probably not many countries in the world, including developed nations, have that up to 80% of urban coverage by sewerage facilities. You can compare with our neighboring countries, except Singapore, because Singapore is small and then it is urbanized overall. But in countries like Malaysia, I think this is something very significant for us to acknowledge. So it means that we have to implement. And we are still improving from time to time in terms of sewerage, in terms of coverage, as well as in terms of ability of our sewage treatment plant to increase the treatment efficiency, as well as to recover resources such as biogas, biomaterials from sludge, and of course, what we are trying to do very, very hard now, and then this is something that I would like to report, that we are going to have our recovered water or reclaimed water from sewerage sector for industrial use. And from time to time, we can improve. So this is what we call as organizational domain improvement. But in order to get people engaged, in order to get people embark on water sustainability, we have to change our culture. In order to change culture, we have to change our habits. And habits in the context of water means that we use water accordingly, efficiently. Yeah, despite water tariff in Malaysia is very cheap, we would like to have a culture of respecting water resources. And since more than 90% of what we do in life are habitual, so it's very important for us to change habit. So education, public awareness need to be enhanced on habitual change. And then another 5 to 10% is about behavioral, and this can be done through various policy. So if we want to embark on policy initiative, normally we can only cover behavioral aspect, not habitual. Habitual is a bit more difficult, except we can engage people. We can get public participating in water security, water sustainability, and this is very important. And engaging public means that we have to inform, we have to consult, we have to involve, we have to collaborate, and we have to empower public. So by doing this, we can have cultural transformation towards personal domain development to achieve outcomes, to respect and to reduce possibility of water pollution in the country. So in terms of initiative that we have done, last year we started National River Trails project. We embarked on that project in achieving 10,000 kilometer river trails in Malaysia. At the moment we have slightly more than 1,000 kilometer. This can be done through our program, The Nice Sungai Kebangsaan. It is a document specifically mention how we can embark on it. At the same time, we encourage friends of rivers in order for people to get closer to river, to understand their river ecosystem and to reduce pollution. By doing that, they themselves will stop pollution to occur in their area. They will report to authorities if they can find anything that related to water pollution occurring in that situation. So this is very important. Instead of just leaving authorities to maintain and to enforce from time to time, now public come forward, they tell us that someone is trying to pollute river and we have to act upon it quickly. So this is the idea of having Friends of Rivers as well as National River Trails in place. On top of that, we are enforcing our enforcement by Department of Environment. We collect e-waste and we have a system in place called Swiss, means that all scheduled waste need to be informed in terms of generation, in terms of transporting, in terms of disposal. So it's all in the system called Swiss, already in place. And then from time to time, we have illegal sludge and scheduled waste being left over or being disposed somewhere. So this is something that we are working very hard, and then we use a lot of facilities not only provided by Department of Environment but also by National Water Services commissions. This is also, we work together with police and many other agencies. On top of that, we use environmental quality monitoring program by Department of Environment. This is in place now. We have many stations for water quality, more than 1,000 water quality stations, and then more than 1,000, more than 60 air quality monitoring station. On top of that, the concessionaire for sewerage services owned by Government of Malaysia called Indah Water Consortium is doing surveillance from time to time. They are visiting places where they suspected it could be pollution or to the sewerage facilities that we have from our local workshops, small and medium scale industries and whatnot. From time to time, they give lectures, sharing information with the public in media on illegal discharge that they are trying to stop. Talking about illegal discharge to the sewerage network. Yeah. So previously, Department of Environment, illegal discharge to the water resources. And from time to time, Department of Environment, SPAN, and IWK, and many other agencies working together in order to protect our water resources. So in general, technology is very important for us. Early warning system is now in place. We want to enhance that from time to time. We also would like manhole cover to be locked, manhole of sewerage network. Yeah. So sometimes people just open the manhole and then discharge to the sewerage network, which is very easy. Yeah. So we have also early detection of illegal substance using e-nose device. This is to ensure that odor generating substances can be identified very early. So in general, we are still struggling to manage our water pollution in the country. From time to time it occurred, and it affects a lot of Malaysians in particular. If you follow the news recently, we still have pockets of activities. For water operators, the easiest way to do is to shut down their water treatment plants. So this to ensure that water supply to be supplied to general public are clean, less in terms of risk to the to the people, the health of the people. So with that, I thank the Embassy of Netherlands in Malaysia for collaborating with CASA in organizing this event. I would like also to personally thank His Excellency Ars Jacobi and Excellency Mr. Hen Ovik for your time together with us today. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I would like to echo the same sentiment as mentioned by Mr. Heng Oving just now. Too much, too little, too dirty of water has presented all water issues. And then as mentioned by Yang Berbahagia Datuk Seri Engineer Dr. Zaini bin Ujang, this platform shall be the platform to fostering stronger collegial collaboration for water sector between the two countries, leveraging on various initiatives by the ministry. So ladies and gentlemen, we shall now proceed to the panel discussion, which will focus on the challenges in managing water pollution and the innovative solutions and technologies in overcoming this issue. For the water dialogue session, we have 3 rounds this afternoon, and it would be my great pleasure to introduce to you all of our esteemed 6 speakers, 3 from Malaysia and 3 from the Netherlands. For round 1, we shall have Mr. Rosli bin Mustafa and Mr. Mark De Roy. It would be my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Rosli, who obtained his Bachelor of Science in Biology from University Putra Malaysia back in 1995. He has over 25 years of working experience in the Department of Environment at state and federal levels. Throughout his service, he has served in Assessment, Enforcement, and Operation Division. He currently holds the post of Director of Water and Marine Division, Department of Environment, Putrajaya. In his current post, he is involved in river, marine, and groundwater quality monitorings. Besides that, he is also in charge of the coordination of oil spill contingency cases, establishment of river and marine related standards and regulations. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us welcome Mr. Rosli bin Mustafa.
Thank you, Dr. Noyati, as our moderator for today's dialogue. These panelists from Netherlands and Malaysia, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Before I proceed my presentation, I would like to thank to the organizer for having me to share the DOE function, the Department of Environment Malaysia function and experience as the leading authority in the environment enforcement, especially in water quality monitoring and wastewater compliance. As for today's presentation, I will presenting an important aspect in ensuring water sustainability and security, which is managing water pollution through integrated solution approach. The next. Before we go deep into the topic, please allow me in brief to introduce my Department of Environment Malaysia, to all of you. As the name is self-explanatory, the Department of Environment is one of the federal authorities that is empowered under the Environmental Quality Act 1974. Our duty is to prevent, abate, and control of pollution as well as for enhancement of the environment. DOE started off as a division under the Ministry of Local Government in 1975, and later we are upgraded to a full department in 1983 under the Ministry of Science, technology, and environment. As of today, we are proud to be served under the Ministry of Environment and Water, in short, KASA, KASA. Our function is driven by our vision and mission, which are our vision is environmental conservation for the well-being of the people, and our mission is to ensure sustainable development in the process of nation building. In short, environment must be conserved and preserved in parallel with economic progression through sustainable development. Okay, next. As I mentioned just now, our Act, Environmental Quality Acts, empower the DOE officer to perform our duties. We have 74 sections. We have 74 sections under this Act with 22 regulation, 15 orders, and 2 rules. For today's presentation, I would like to inform to you, ladies and gentlemen, that we have 6 sections. We have 6 sections under the EQA related to water pollution control, which later translate into a regulation to control the discharge from the industry, leachate, sewage, and toxic waste. Through the regulation, the management and the discharge of generated wastewater must be complied by all the regulated premises. The next. As I mentioned under the Section 3 of the Environmental Quality Act 1974, our Director General of Environment have to produce an annual report on status of environmental quality. In order to produce the report, DOE is responsible to perform a water quality monitoring in major river water in Malaysia, as well as marine and groundwater. The data is then utilized to formulate the enforcement strategy. Enforcement program will emphasize on pollution-prone area, which area recorded downward trend in water quality, or to the premise that generate significant amount of pollution flow into the river. For river water quality monitoring, we have 1,353, as mentioned by our Datuk Sri Zaini Ujang, as a manual station, and we have 30 continuous station in 672 river in throughout the Malaysia. Among the parameter monitored under the monitoring program are pH value, dissolved oxygen, suspended solid, biological oxygen demand, chemical oxygen demand, and ammonium nitrogen. The next. If you refer to the slide, shown that the overall status of Malaysian river are getting better, with an increased number of clean river starting in 2018 to the 2019. I'm glad also to share the number of slightly polluted river in the downward trend in the same period of time. However, the polluted river in the red color do not play significant changes over the years. Next. In this matter, I will share with you that the reality in water pollution management in Malaysia. As you refer to the slide, there are many other departments and agencies at federal, state, and local government that has been empowered to play significant role in managing water pollution. DOE, Department of Environment, is responsible in ensuring the stipulated regulatory requirement of industrial effluent, sewage, and leachate discharge, schedule waste management, and EIA approval condition to make sure they are compliant to the regulation. As part of the DOE, authorities such as Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Air Negara, National Water Services Commission, the Department of Environment, and the Department of Irrigation and Drainage, IWK, in the Water Consortium, as well as state water regulatory authorities and local authorities also have an important role in managing this subject. Next, as displayed before you, I have listed some laws and regulations that are relevant for today's topics covering both state and federal level. There are specific regulations formulated under EQA 1974 to serve as water pollution control from palm oil mill, natural rubber process factories, industrial effluent, sewage treatment system, solid waste disposal facility, and EIA project. However, the scope is limited and does not cover other various sources that fall under various law of different authorities. Hence, a concerted, holistic, and integrated approach involves related ministers, department, and authority in significant importance. Next, the Department of Environment has been incorporated the integrated approach element in managing water pollution for quite some time. As listed here, allow me to share some example of it. In EIA and any EIA that submitted to the DOE will be assessed by a committee comprises of various government department, agency, and even NGO prior to decision or approval of this report. Besides that, we also done an integrated enforcement action in ensuring environmental criminals are prosecuted and the environment will remain protected. Then DOE also actively support the plan developed by supplying river water quality data. And we also, as mentioned by our Datuk Sri, public participation is very important, and we also did our communication, education, and public environment program. Okay, next. I have reached the end of my presentation, and as a conclusion, integrated approach among the authorities at federal, state, as well as local authorities is obviously critical solution in ensuring water quality is well protected. In addition to that, public participation is also a vital component of the integration of the cooperation in significant in safeguarding our water quality. With that, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Mr. Rosli bin Mustafa, Director from Department of Environment, for the kind sharing and introductions on initiatives that has been done by your department today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to share with you that the session today is also being broadcasted through the International Green Tech and Eco Products Exhibition and Conference Malaysia, the IGEM 2021. So please have a look and please kindly share the network, the link with your professional network for this event today, because it is live streaming on IGEM 2021 too, as well as the session is also available for a free participation today with everyone watching. So ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our second panelist, our first panelist from the Netherlands, the second panelist for the first round of Water Dialogue session, Mr. Mark D. Roy, who is a water quality expert in the water quality department at the Dutch Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management. Since 2016, he is in charge of the program on pharmaceutical residues in water. Before that, he worked on several positions in the field of water quality policies, and his background is largely in environmental quality sciences from Wageningen University. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us invite Mr. Mark De Roy. Mr. Mark, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I'm trying to start my video. Video has been stopped by the operator. So
Can Secretariat help Mr. Mark De Roy on this? To switch on his video, please, kindly.
Yeah, you should be able to turn it on now.
yes, yes.
Yes, we can see you.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll share my screen so you have my presentation. I hope you can see it. Do you see my presentation now? Yes? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So I was asked to explain you something about the recent developments in sewage treatment in the Netherlands. I'm very honored that you gave me the opportunity for that. I'll just be very brief. So what happened in the Netherlands? We had a development in water quality since the 60s. In the 60s, our surface waters, well, they tended to be black because of the lack of oxygen. And in the 20 years' time, we turned them from black to green because there were too many nutrients in them. And nowadays, we have, not everywhere, but several places, we have clear water again. And we see species returning after decades of absence. So the question is, how did this happen? Of course, there was something done in the treatment technologies. In 1970, the Water Pollutions Act came into force, and that introduced a system of permits, taxation, and subsidies. So in order to discharge, you needed a permit, and this discharge was taxed, and the money collected was used to subsidize new technologies and new processes. So this really introduced a long-term process of continuous improvement. So it took about 20 years, and of course we really looked into the removal of oxygen demand in the beginning years, in the starting years. And in the 90s, there was the EU, so the European Commission directive on the treatment of urban wastewater, and that meant that we also had to remove the nutrients. So this made the change from the green water to the clear water. Now, in the current days, you can see there's a lot being done in process optimization. We work on the removal of micropollutants, and that's the latest development. We are recovering energy and raw materials. So these are the pictures of the current sewage treatment plants that we have in the Netherlands. It's really large scale installations nowadays. They have been centralized a lot. So at this moment, we have 314 of these installations, and they are still being more and more centralized. And well, you can see there are different ways of aeration, so the different techniques being used. And for a long time, the main innovation was that we covered the tanks, so because of the smell. However, in 2012, the Nereda process was invented, and well, you could say that's an optimization of the active sludge process. It's a cyclus in 3 phases. So first, you have to feed the tank. You can see that it's grains. The bacteria live in grains. Well, in the first phase, it's being fed. Then we have aeration phase. Then there's a settlement, and then, well, part of it is discharge, and there's a new feeding, and it all goes around. Well, it really made the installations a lot smaller. So, for example, in Utrecht, we used to have an installation like this with 14 of these settling tanks, and nowadays it's all comprised into 6 tanks. So it makes the installation much smaller and also more energy friendly, etc. Well, another improvement that's started last year was the removal of micropollutants. It started in 2016 with the Dutch chain approach on pharmaceutical residues. And of course, there's being done a lot in the first end or the front end of the whole chain. But we think that the most will be done at the sewage treatment end of the chain. We think that 80% of the effects will be done there. So we have to improve the sewage treatment plants, and at this moment we are looking at the use of ozone to oxidize micropollutants and active coal to absorb micropollutants. There is a innovation program that has been started with the water boards, the regional authorities that are the owners of the sewage treatment plants. Together with consultants and universities, they are really looking into new techniques and improving the ozone, the existing ozone and active coal technologies. Well, and this year, in 2 weeks, the first full-scale installation improve all of our wastewater treatment plants. We made a hotspot analysis, and that showed that there are about 80 to 100 STPs that are really influencing the surface water, and they need to be improved at first. So this is the installation in Leiden North. It's a coal installation, so that will be opened the 30th of September. You can see here it's active coal being tank, where you can see how small the installation is. And here, this is the actual dosing part. So it's really small, and well, I think it's a really good next step in our treatment of urban wastewater. Finally, we have some other developments. Of course, the recovering of energy of gas was longer known, but nowadays we are also looking at the recovering of raw materials, nutrients, like it's being done in the form of struvite, but also cellulose. And the latest improvement is that we are actually recovering the water itself. So we have problems with droughts also in the Netherlands, and we're looking now in the possibility of reusing that water in agriculture, but also in industrial processes. And finally, very interesting, but still very expensive and also rather new, is the Waterfabriek Bilp, which is a water factory in Bilp. Bilp is a small place in Veluwe, in the Netherlands. And that doesn't use biology at all. It's only physical and chemical treatment, and you could say that it's refining the wastewater, trying to recover as much as energy and raw materials as we can from the water. So this was my my presentation. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mark De Roy, for the presentation and sharing on hotspot analysis for sewage treatment plant system, and then there's mention on Merida system, and of course new developments on energy recovery. And thank you also to Mr. Rosley, who already shared with us a little bit some insights on river water quality monitoring program brought over by the Department of Environment. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall now move to the next speaker in the next session. For the next round, we shall have Engineer Bibi Zarina Che Omar and Dr. Engineer Doris Van Halem. So we shall have the first speaker, Engineer Bibi Zarina Che Omar, who is a professional engineer with over 30 years of working experience in the Department of Irrigation and Drainage at district, state, and federal levels. Throughout her career, she has been serving in the hydrology, urban drainage, corporate river, coastal and flood divisions before she was appointed as the State Director of the Federal Territory of Kuala Lumpur. Currently, she is the Director of Water Resources and Hydrology Divisions. On top of her normal work, she is quite an active member in non-governmental organizations such as the UNESCO IHP Malaysia and holding the post of Honorary Secretary. Engineer Bibi also represents Department of Irrigation and Drainage Malaysia at the Global Water Partnership Malaysia and currently work to seek the Global Climate Fund for Malaysia. Without further ado, over to you, Engineer Bibi.
Thank you very much, Puan Moderator Dr. Yati. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for the kind introduction by the moderator. So my topic for today is on sharing best practices on water management in line with the theme of managing water pollution in an integrated solution approach. So I would like you all to look at the picture on the left. There is a picture of Sungai Melaka or Melaka River, which was once a very dirty river, very polluted, but now it is actually a top of a town. This river was revived using the integrated approach, where all agencies work together with an integrated plan to improve the river and its also river banks. And the result is, as you can see in the picture, very nice. Okay, next slide, please. Next, this is actually the outline of my presentation. I will talk to you on the water facts in Malaysia, barriers towards better river, and probably talk a bit on integrated solution approach and way forward opportunities. And also finally, I will conclude. Next, please. For a start, let us look at the water scenario in Malaysia. So Malaysia receives a lot of water, as you have also heard from our Secretary General, which he mentioned that Malaysia receives annually almost actually 3,000 millimeters of water, rainfall which we receive annually, and it is 3 times the global average. And 97% of the water supply in Malaysia is derived from rivers and also reservoirs. In total, Malaysia has about almost 3,000 river basins all over Malaysia, where 189, which we call major river basins. And as also mentioned by Mr. Rosli just now, there are 672 river quality, river which is monitored for river quality. And out of that, 408 are clean rivers, 205 slightly polluted river, while 59 rivers are polluted, which is about 9% from the total of the river monitored for river quality. Next, please. So, having said that, now let us look at the barriers towards achieving the really good quality rivers. As you can see in the picture, if we have a catchment or a basin, there are many activities in the basin, such as housing, we have farmland, agricultural, mining, townships, and we extract water from the river for drinking, for agricultural industries, and so many other activities, and then we discharge it back into the river. So you take in clean water and you discharge back dirty water. So that is what is happening in the country, yeah? And a river can be really clean in the upstream from the source in the forest and the mountains. Taking, for example, this Klang River, if you have seen the picture, the slide, the videos in the earlier part of this session, where you see the ocean cleanup machine that's being used to clean the river, that is actually Klang River at the downstream end. At the upstream end, it is very clean. It is under class 1, pristine river, and as it flows down downstream, a lot of activities take place, and we discharge a lot of things into the river, and finally end up become class 4, class 5. Yeah? And other than that, we need to use water wisely, as not to over extract the water, plan the usage of water, especially during drier periods, during March, February, March, April, during the dry periods, and then during the wetter season, during the monsoon, that is October, November, December. the river might overflow its banks and flood the low-lying areas. Thus, we need to manage the river properly. Sometimes you don't have enough water, and sometimes you have too much water, or too little, too much, and too polluted, too dirty, as what has been mentioned earlier. And public attitude is another issue that we have to manage with care. Okay, a lot has been said about public participation just now. That is part and parcel of what we need to do to ensure that we can have a good river management. Yeah. So public at large, they expect the authorities to clean the river regularly, when in actual fact, it's not possible for us to do that not all the time. The concept of controlled source is very much relevant here. That is, we take care of our own rubbish and do not simply throw them into the river. Integrating and involving the community with communication, education, and awareness program is vital to ensure we can instill good values to the communities. Next slide. In addressing the issue or barriers I mentioned just now, one way to achieve better river management is through an integrated approach that is called the IRBM, or Integrated River Basin Management. This was also mentioned by the minister just now. So as highlighted earlier, a river system will experience drought, river flooding, and also pollution. So under drought management, we actually created a system to create water balance. We have a tool which we call NAWAPS, or National Water Balance Management System. This is to ensure adequate water. NAWAPS can produce 9 outputs from the system, and among them is to identify and quantify water needs and also water demand. Under flood management, what we are doing is identifying potential flood hazard areas and provide early warning to reduce flood risk. One tool that is in operation is the National Flood Forecasting and Warning System, or we call it NAFAS, where we can provide 7 days forecast and at least 2 days warning for the communities to get themselves prepared. The tagline is to move while still dry. So we do not have to mobilize too many government assets to move them during flooding when the area is really flooded. And under pollution management, as we know, pollution can be from point sources and also from non-point sources. Non-point sources normally carries a lot of rubbish or floatables, which is visible to the eye. And authorities are also expected to clean the rubbish and collect and clean them, and that sometimes we do, but it is not possible for us to do it all the time. So what is important is for us to look is also to look at the carrying capacity of the river, and this can be done by looking at TMDL, or we call it total maximum daily load. So what is TMDL? It is the maximum amount of pollutant that a body of water can receive or accept. So this TMDL is actually under the Department of Environment, under DOE, where the aim is for us to ensure clean water, clean river, at least class 2, where we can have body contact. Yeah. Okay, next. So besides the integrated approach mentioned, another approach is through the cultural transformation in river management. The minister and also the Secretary General just now also mentioned on this, where we call it Denai Sungai Kebangsaan, or the river trails. So this program is actually strongly promoted by the Ministry of Environment and Water, or CASA, where the objectives is actually to control river pollution, to encourage recreational and also nature-based activities, to improve water quality, and also to establish shared responsibility and preserve our river, and also to encourage ecotourism. The strategic partner will be within the federal government and state government, local government, non-NGOs, communities, and also private corporate entities or universities. And as mentioned earlier, that you can also have Friends of Rivers, the NGOs. We work together with them under this program. And the program can be, you can have an adopt a river program, CSR program, awareness and education program. We can have community program, and we can have gotoroyongs. That is, gotoroyong is our word, our term, which we go together and clean the river. Okay, next. As a way forward, among the strategies that the ID is working on, the ID Drainage and Irrigation Department, where I come from, what we are promoting is to build with nature. So meaning that not to concrete line all the rivers, that is what we like to do, used to do, concrete line all the rivers, but now we're going back to building with nature and then make room for water. And we know that water needs space, it needs room. When the rain falls down and there'll be a lot of water in the river, and it need room to flow. So we do not constrict or build a really small channel for it. We have to let it flow in the floodplain. Yeah. And next will be to bring back the beaches, which is not quite related here, and also creating for resilience. So we need to have a river which is resilient to flooding, resilient to even drought, and also when there's pollution, we need to help to improve so that the water can be more resilient and we can take water from the rivers. And improving the old laws and enactments to reflect current socio-economic conditions, challenges, and also goals. And lastly is to establish an integrated national water river center. We have many departments and agencies in the country which collect water-related information, and we need to put it in a repository, integrated data management, so that center or management to collect and easy access to all. So we want it to be in one center where everybody can access the information and data. Okay, next. So as a conclusion, we need to strengthen enforcement to protect water resources and prevent pollution, and also increase non-structural measures to complement structural measures by educating the young generation from preschool or primary school and make it a culture. Society requires cultural change to be more respectful of the environment, a sense of ownership, a shift from total reliance upon government initiative to community contribution. Pollution impact in future development need to be addressed and given priority in control at source and not discharging directly to the river. Must look at water resources management in a holistic approach to make sure the future generation have enough clean water to use. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Bibi, for such wonderful insights on Malaysia water story, as well as some of its barriers towards having better rivers in Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you our next speaker, Dr. Engineer Doris van Halem, who is an associate professor at the Delft University of Technology in the field of drinking water treatment. Her research group focuses on understanding removal mechanisms, including pathogens, metals, antibiotic resistance, to support a global transition to accessible and sustainable water technologies. She is the program leader of TU Delft Water for Impact. Dr. Van Halem is responsible for the water research in and with the Global South. Within this framework, she is initiator of the African Water Corridor and spin-off co-creation projects between TU Delft and African partners along development corridors. Dr. Doris, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Yati, for this introduction. Let me just share my screen. Okay, if you don't see it, please let me know. So I'm indeed Associate Professor at Delft University of Technology. But maybe I'd like to start with my connection to Malaysia, because when I just graduated from 15 years ago, I was able to visit with my thesis work a conference, which was actually set across the Petronas Towers in Kuala Lumpur. So I felt very lucky just a few years after the hit movie Entrapment. I'm sure you all know the Sean Connery movie, and not to forget Katarina Zeta-Jones that was set there. So I could not believe that I was there or on the other side of the world in this Hollywood setting. So since then I feel connected. And actually it was a really good conference, mostly focusing on water treatment technologies. So normally I have a lot of graphs in my presentations. I try to keep it a bit more a helicopter view. Nevertheless, I do have a few graphs, because I'd like to discuss water technology from the perspective of rethinking the waste streams. Just to introduce briefly, I'm leading the program Water for Impact. If you're interested, have a look. It's a program where we study different water technologies across the different water fields. So water for food, like irrigation technologies, water treatment technologies, but also the human factor in water, so more governance related topics. But what I'd like to cover today is the hidden costs of discharge. So I think it was already pinpointed also by engineer Bibi and other speakers before her, is that obviously having clean rivers starts by preventing pollution. I think in general, prevention is not the most sexy thing to work on, right? It's better to cure or more attractive to cure than to prevent. And I think that is in health often the case, but definitely also in the health of our rivers. So I think it's important that we start recognizing the true economic, not only economic, but the true value of treating water prior to discharge. And not just looking at the health of our rivers, but also looking at what is in our waters and how can we add value to this waste stream. Which means that we need also to quantify the environmental and public health gain that is associated with having better quality discharge water. I'll get back to that later. So first, let me introduce one of our projects in New Delhi, India, which attracted a lot of attention the past years. Here you can see our king and queen visiting the rather polluted site, because this project is about reusing water and reusing nutrients and other valuables that could be available in the water of the Barapula drain, which used to be a storm drain, but over the years has turned into an open sewer because there is no closed sewer collection in this part of New Delhi, which means that it's more of a river that is highly polluted, smelly, and unattractive and unhealthy to live close to. So within this project, which is a collaboration between IIT Delhi and TU Delft, Wageningen University, and NEO, so different research institutions within the Netherlands, different technologies are being studied to recover resources in the water. So on the right, you can see a project on algae. In the middle, there is a wetland project. And to the left, there's a project of my colleague Antonella on the DAF system. And my own background is not in resource recovery from wastewater. I'm a drinking water engineer. So actually, I don't really look at the resources in the water, but I'd rather consider water to be the resource in the water. So I'm quoting a colleague from a water board here in the Netherlands who said to me, well, actually, water is our most valuable resource. And for us, it's really hard to give value to our water because of restrictions and other reasons that make it complicated to offer wastewater that has been fully treated back to the community. So much of the water that is being treated rather well now is discharged into the ocean instead of reused for agriculture or construction or even households. And of course, it's difficult. So not just from the perception perspective, reusing wastewater, yeah, it's kind of a dirty idea, let's be honest. But also because actually it's quite polluted and it's fluctuating in pollutions. So there might be antibiotic resistant bacteria, random other pathogenic bacteria, viruses, protozoa, heavy metals, pesticides, medicines, hormones, high loads of nutrients still, even in the tertiary treated water, maybe plastics, talk about microplastics, but even nanoplastics, and often new contaminants pop up. So it is a challenging water matrix to treat. I'd like to argue that we need water technologies that fulfill multiple tasks. So if we look at our drinking water treatment schemes, for example, that treat water from surface water all the way to drinking water, we have often 5 to 10 treatment technologies in series to produce safe water. So imagine having another 5 to 10 treatment technologies beyond our wastewater treatment plants to produce this water. I think that is economically unattractive and will need a lot of knowledge and operational expertise to run. So I envision technologies that can cope with multiple contaminants in this difficult water matrix. Well, there are already technologies around and being tested in the field. And one of them that is increasingly attracting attention is iron electrocoagulation. Iron electrocoagulation, it's like coagulation, I think many of you might know about coagulation is dosing a chemical, iron or aluminium salt to a water matrix. But then electrocoagulation is electricity driven. So you use, for example, iron plates in the water, and then when you pass a current through them, one of them, the anode, will dissolve into the water. So with that, you're adding iron to the water. So you don't need chemicals, and import of chemicals, it depends on where you are in the world, can be quite challenging actually. And electrocoagulation is already used for removing different contaminants from the water, like heavy metals, arsenic, but it's not really seen as a disinfection technology. So what we were interested in is to see if we could actually utilize this technology as a disinfectant, particularly in this diverse matrix of wastewater, which is fluctuating, high in organics. It's really more challenging than most drinking waters. So here you see Bruno Bicudo, the PhD candidate that is working on this. So here's one of the two graphs in my presentation, just to show you that on the horizontal axis, there's the iron dose. And on the vertical axis, there's a log reduction of E. coli, the indicator organism that we use in this case. And it's just to highlight the difference between using traditional iron coagulant, which is typically an iron 3, so ferrous, ferric iron coagulant, and iron electrocoagulation, which is the black dots. And you see that the log reduction related to the iron dose, it's highly attractive for electrochemical dosing, which makes sense because if we dose iron as ferrous iron, which is 2+, it will oxidize in the presence of oxygen and produce radicals. And these radicals are toxic to E. coli and other organisms, and actually also responsible for arsenic oxidation, for example. So I think this is really exciting. It needs scientific depth, but then in practice, you have a bulk technology that can do a lot of jobs at the same time in a water treatment train. A second project I'd like to highlight is a project of my colleague Sakker here in the picture. Actually, this project is oriented on Malaysia. It's a palm oil mill effluent to diamond project. And I think this project nicely illustrates that instead of looking at the waste, which is the palm oil mill effluent, they are envisioning the production of diamond electrodes, which is really attractive, right? So in this case, prevention, so preventing pollution, I think can be turned into something that is actually quite sexy, namely producing diamond electrodes. So technologically advanced, but in the end, this palm oil mill effluent treatment will prevent pollution of the rivers. My last example, it's a project we ran last year, which is close to my own work field. It's related to groundwater sludge. I see that there's a wrong number here because there is every day 10,000 tons of sludge produced in the Netherlands. So here it says worldwide, but it's just in the Netherlands. And we are a country relying on groundwater, but still we are a small country. So if you would translate it to the globe, it's really way, way more tons of sludge that are being produced by the production of groundwater. The sludge is now, at least in the Netherlands, mostly because of the filtration technologies that we use with oxidation filtration, which is typically used anywhere in the world. But we envision a shift to more anaerobic reverse osmosis, for example, where the concentrate stream might be even higher than the sludge that is currently being produced. So this really is a waste problem. And what we looked at, if we could, instead of producing this waste, this iron oxide sludge, which is watery and not really useful, we could produce vivianite, which is a beautiful blue magnetic crystal. And it worked. We were so happy. So the nice thing is that apart from producing vivianite, as you can see in this graph, we also got higher removal percentages of the iron, which you can see if you look at the second bar compared to the first one, it's slightly higher. At the first glance, I feel like, what does it matter? It's just a few micrograms per liter extra removal. But actually for water companies, this is incredibly important because iron, even at low concentrations, causes brown water at the customer. And here in the Netherlands, we drink water from the tap, and then having brown water once in a while is really problematic for the trust of the water quality. So a very exciting new innovation, I would say, and we'll be working on it further the coming years. So what I wanted to underline in my presentation is that water pollution goes beyond cleaning up our water bodies, but we should start rethinking and valuing our wastewater streams. And technologies can help in that. So this was my contribution. We are quite active on LinkedIn. So if you're interested to learn more about our different projects, have a look at Water for TU Delft, Water for Impact on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Doris, for a nice presentation on water for impact. And of course, I'll leave my conclusion at the end of the session later. And may I remind all participants who are attending this session today to please kindly jot down your questions if you have any in the chat box over Zoom from wherever you are watching this session. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us invite our third panelist from Malaysia today, Mr. Narendran, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Indah Water Consortium Sendirian Berhad. His role is to spearhead the company to undertake the vital task of ensuring that Malaysians today and in the future will be able to enjoy a clean and healthy environment through a proper and well-maintained sewerage system. He has over 20 years of successful experience with combined professional experience in strategic planning, business development, planning of water and wastewater infrastructures and operations of water and wastewater services, including project financing. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us welcome Mr. Narendran. Mr. Naren, the floor is yours.
Thank you, moderator. Greetings to our moderator, Professor Ayati, fellow panelists from Malaysia and the Netherlands, friends and colleagues from all over who are following our dialogue today. My name is Narendran and I'm the CEO of Indah Water Consortium, and I'll be sharing with you our wastewater management practice, best practices and initiatives that we are carrying out. Next, please. As an introduction, we are a national sewerage company owned by the government of Malaysia, providing sewerage services to Peninsular Malaysia and Federal Territory of Labuan, an island off coast of Sabah. We are operating at 11 states and 3 federal territories, covering 101 local authorities. We are servicing about 28 million population and covering an area of 82,000 square kilometers. In terms of capacity, we have about approximately 7,100 sewage treatment plants nationwide. Together, along with that, we have close to 1,300 network pump stations, 20,000 kilometers of sewer pipelines, and we have 1 water reclamation plant. Our resources, we have about 3,400 human capital, staffs, employees, supporting through 22 unit offices nationwide. Of scattered areas, we have reporting centers, 5 laboratories, 1 research center, 1 training center, and 1 museum. It's a old British built pump station that we are rehabilitating now, and soon to launch museum sometime next month. Next, please. At a glance, in Malaysia, sewage management, apart from connected sewage services, we have close to 1.3 million individual septic tanks and close to 900,000 pore flush system. So we, apart from treating at our public sewage treatment plants, we also provide dislodging services to all our customers nationwide. Next, please. Very similar to Engineer BB presented just now, there are many sources of pollutant into rivers, among which animal farm, manufacturing industries, agro-based industries, wet market, and sewage. Now, the major pollution does come from sewage, of which primarily from septic tanks. So what we have done this year is we have got, or rather the government has approved for dislodging of sewage services to be done on a scheduled basis, and the law has been, and then the regulation has been gazetted. Yeah, next please. From the company perspective, we have enhanced throughout the years the initiative to ensure that water catchment areas are protected. Hence, our trimmer plant located upstream of water intake point and major plants are equipped with early warning system. We have 24-hour surveillance team members moving around at critical plants upstream of water intake points. We have 24 hours men, employees or contractors manning large plants, primarily centralized plants and plants within water catchment area. Our employee last year, 2 years ago, have designed a manhole locking system where apart from the manhole cover, we have another platform beneath the manhole cover with padlocks, which is very difficult to open. So we have initiated the installation of such manhole locks at critical areas. This is because we have been facing illegal dumping by irresponsible parties into secluded manholes located at secluded areas. We also control and manage theft risk. We primarily engage with all stakeholders involved, particularly water operators, state water regulatory bodies, National Water Services Commission, and Department of Environment. So together we have formed task force at some states with high risk, and we do surveillance together, and we help each other in detecting the source of pollution when such incident occurs. So this is one thing new that I'll present later, is online monitoring system to detect illegal discharge. So when a crisis happens, emergency response action, we have developed complete SOPs in managing all our responsive action pertaining to early warning system, surveillance team, and ERP team. So what we do is we initiate a detection, tracing of source of the illegal discharge so that we can control that source before entering into our treatment plant. If at all it enters our treatment plant, we will carry out the necessary SOP in containing the illegal discharge and treating it off-site. This has caused a lot of impact to us actually in terms of financially and as well as public perception. It has damaged. So we are working very hard to control this. So when an illegal discharge happens, we have to spend a lot of money in rehabilitating and repairing our plants. So in order to avoid this, we have, thanks to the ministry, the National Water Services Commission and DOE, we are quite strict, and the government is looking into coming out with more stringent law to punish the irresponsible parties. Next, please. Application of early warning system. We have installed this in all critical plants and all large plants, whereby this system actually detects if there's malfunction of mechanical and electrical equipment, sensor to detect water level, and also a sensor to indicate to us if there's disruption to power supply. Sorry. So all this is signals is sent through SMS, and once the team is aware and necessary action will be taken. We monitor this and we create our own dashboard for internal use. So this has been progressing, and we've been continuously enhancing our system. Next, please. This is a typical example, mobilization of 24-hour surveillance team at critical water catchment areas. So we have a team with 3 shifts, at times 2 shifts, moving around to ensure that all our plants are properly running and there's no illegal substance entering into our plant. Next, please. Okay, this is a new initiative that we have carried out. The proof of concept is ongoing now. We have installed a device to detect potential illegal substance such as hydrocarbon, solvent, pigment, and as well as COD. So if there's a spike in COD, this sensor can actually trigger, and we can take the necessary action to to carry out what is required. So this has been quite successful. It's very costly, but we're looking at it for installation at critical areas. Next, please. Moving towards achieving a circular economy as well as controlling pollution, we have been working with the ministry. Ministry have been very supportive in creating or converting the planned sewage treatment plants, future sewage treatment plants, to also be a complete holistic water recycling plants for non-potable use. So we have a target, the ministry, within 10 years until 2030, we have to actually have infrastructure to produce 1,500 million liters per day. So this is an initiative to create a new source of water, but I'm going to emphasize is purely for non-potable use, mainly for industrial usage. So by having such advanced treatment technologies, we are able to control pollution and further recycle this water for good use. So I've come to an end on my presentation, and I'll pass the floor to the moderator, Professor Ayati.
Thank you so much, Mr. Narendran. I think a lot have been shared by Indah Water Consortium Sendirian Berhad, and a lot has been done as well, and a lot will be done towards protecting our sewage treatment plant, and then making sure that the task forces on states with higher risk providing online monitoring systems for all the systems in place by Indah Water Consortium. Thank you, Mr. Naren. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on, we have our final speaker for today, our third panelist from the Netherlands, Dr. Stefan Koels, who works at KWR as a researcher and team leader in the Chemical Water Quality and Health Department. He has more than 20 years of experiences in the water sector, both as a scientific researcher and ecotoxicology advisor. He is fully acquainted with the European legislation, such as the EU Water Framework and the Drinking Water Directives accordingly. Mr. Stefan enjoys working on emerging contaminants such as microplastics and on new monitoring methods like bioassays, sensors, and citizen science. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Stefan Koels.
Thank you, moderator, dear guests and visitors from all over the world. Thank you for letting me speak. I hope everything goes well on the technical side. Let me first introduce the institute that I'm working on, the KWR Water Research Institute. We're in the Netherlands, based in Nieuwegein, and we started in 1948, formerly known as Kiwa, and already in 1970s we started doing the research on the toxicity of surface water, which is my background, and I hope that I can share something about that. But as we have the 10 Dutch water utilities as shareholders, we are not focusing on the toxicity only. We're also watching a sustainable water cycle, going beyond drinking water, looking at technologies. Many of them have been presented today already, and also looking at the future and how to participate with clients of the utilities and also society as a whole. I am pointing out where we are located. If you see here, this is the Dutch Delta, like Malaysia, in front of the sea, and depending largely on water coming from the mainland. And we produce over 40% from surface water. We produce the drinking water, and this remaining 60% roughly is groundwater. So we have two main sources of water that we are depending on. I'm talking about surface water today, being the focus of our studies. For example, this is a recent study in which we were able to look at the long-term development of all kinds of compounds that have been part of the national monitoring program to inform
the drinking water companies, the water stakeholders, and also the Dutch government. And you can clearly see that some compounds are phased out, they are banned, and then they will diminish in the water. But also some new compounds will emerge and be detected and sometimes even increase because due to high use and high loads in the river. And for example, we were able to make a quality index, a water quality index, to show that slowly the removal requirements, so the amount of, let's say, technological equipment to produce drinking water from river water is slowly increasing over the years, which this is not what we want to have in Europe and in the Netherlands. We want to have cleaner water. So the title of today's session was an integrated solution approach. And I have been focusing on the water safety planning cycle as a whole. Our research is focusing on detection methods, on risk assessment, and mitigations options, which the last is technology. But let me first start with detection, the core of our research group. And here we often use the term target analysis. You already know what you are looking for, and you specifically measure or detect the compounds of interest. But what we have also been successful in the last decades is to more and more study the unknowns, the non-targets, that the compounds that you're not having some information on. And with that, you use a high-resolution mass spectrometry. It's a sophisticated lab technology, but you can be very successful in making fingerprints of water. For example, this is a fingerprint where you can see that all kinds of suspects are measured in effluent, in surface water, in groundwater, and drinking water. And if you look from left to right, you can see that there are less features visible in drinking water than in effluent. So that is a good sign of that the removal and transformation takes place, and the compounds are disappearing, and you have safe drinking water. And what we also see, that if you go along this chain of water, let's say the water cycle, that the polarity increases, which means that compounds tend to dissolve better, behave better in water than not in water. So they want to, they are more difficult to remove by using all kinds of traditional techniques, and you need advanced techniques, which have been presented also by the Ministry of the Netherlands. Part of, if you have detected these compounds, you want to know what are the specific characteristics of those compounds. You want to identify them. You want to know what kind of substance is in the water. You want to do risk assessment. You need some background, some maybe bioassay information by using cells that respond to the chemicals and see that you can find toxic effects. And eventually you can inform for example, the government or the sewage treatment plant owner to monitor a certain compound. We are using all kinds of techniques which are published, and if I can send in more information, but it comes down that you can make clusters and prioritize based on using the chemical data and the toxicity data. And for example, there is also this quantitative chemical risk assessment procedure that you can identify the exposure, how much is actually in your drinking water, what is the hazard, and how can you characterize the risk. And if the risk is too high, what can you do to optimize your system? So it immediately links to the next phase. What can you do on mitigation? And as been presented in the previous talks, there's a lot of technology available, but you also want to know whether it works. So you need some techniques. And for example, we have been successful in screening for unknowns and knowns to assess the treatment performance. And for example, this is a study on several oxidative and non-oxidative techniques in the Netherlands. And mitigation can also be focused on nature-based solutions, of which you have seen the constructed wetlands, and you can use all this information to inform governmental policy, which has been clearly presented already, is that you rather have not have to cure the patient, but you have to prevent the patient of getting ill, meaning you want to have a clean river at first. What is not in the river doesn't have to be cleaned. So consumer awareness about the risks using our sophisticated techniques and also toxicity information you can use to inform consumers and governments. And for example, this has led to the chain approach in which the whole production and the use phase and the waste phase of using pharmaceuticals in the Netherlands has been assessed, and everybody in this chain is doing something and not only focusing on the end of pipe treatment. So if you want to close the water solution, the water safety planning, you can use all this data to do some trend analysis to inform your water quality reports, and which lead hopefully to a responsible water reuse. And what we have studied, for example, is that if you have this shift of paradigm in not only the safe treatment and discharge of wastewater, but also transforming the used water to the fit for purpose water. And then you need an interdisciplinary approach in which you combine the governance, the treatment technologies, health and safety issues, and all kinds of reuse applications. Because in the end, it's all down to demand and availability. Too much, too little, or too dirty, but I rather have the right water with the right quality at the right time. That's the goal of the research which you can lead to. So with that, I hope that I give an overview of our work, and I'm happy to take some questions from you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stefan Koos from KWR, for the nice sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have come to the Q&A session. I know a dialogue like this tend to create lots and lots of questions, as I have received some from the Zoom chat box here for the speakers. And today we have 3 speakers from the Netherlands and 3 speakers from Malaysia. I shall moderate some of the questions to which I have received here. Here from Dr. Ching, there's a question from our Netherlands counterparts. How much is the cost of 1 cubic meter of water in the Netherlands? And how does the Netherlands manage water residue? Perhaps our colleagues from the Netherlands would like to attempt that question.
A cubic meter of drinking water?
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming.
Yes,
it depends slightly on where you live, but 1.5 euro per cubic meter is more or less the average, I believe.
Okay. And how does the Netherlands manage water residue? Also from the same block of questions.
So I'm guessing what is meant with water residue. So of course there's always a waste stream. Whatever technology you almost apply, there's a waste stream, and I think a lot depending on the waste stream there's a different use. So I know that I live close to the biggest water treatment plant of Europe. It's a traditional wastewater treatment plant, so no Nereda there, and I know this water is discharged in the ocean. So it's actually the product that is now not being used. Mm-hmm. I believe that in the end, most of the sludge is incinerated at that specific plant.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Dr. Doris. I hope that satisfied the queries.
Yeah,
And then-
please add other colleagues. Eh?
Yes. I have one question here for Mr. Mark DeRoy, who has vast experiences in water quality investigation. How long was research dedicated before NEREDA was translated to industrial implementation? I think that was related to the aerobic granulation just now in your presentation, Mr. Mark DeRoy.
Yes. I think that NEREDA was invented somewhere in 2012, and there are now about 80 installations installed. So I think the whole investigation took about 5 to 10 years, something like that.
Okay, so 5 to 10 years before translation from research to industrial implementation. Thank you, Mr. Mark DeRoy. I have a question also for Mr. Rosley. What are some of the challenges faced by the Department of Environment when dealing with pollutions caused by regulated premises or industries? Mr. Rosley?
Thank you, Doctor. Of course, when we talk about enforcement, there is a rapid development in Malaysia that result in increase in the source of pollution. And while the number of the enforcement officers still remain the same. So there is an imbalance of ratio between the industry and the enforcement officer. So we have to carefully plan our enforcement activity to make sure that we are covered all the sources of pollution. That is one. And then second is there is still lacking in terms of competency among the industry. Environmental compliance is not given enough attention from the premises, and so the budget is very limited for the environment issue. Hence, the pollution prevention and control were not done effectively and adequately. Yeah. And there is still lacking of awareness among the industry, so that there is still an incident happen during the night time, during the out of DOE working hours, and as a result of it, there is a serious pollution still happen in Malaysia. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Mr. Rosley, and perhaps awareness creation in terms of how might regulated premises and industries deal with pollutions is also important, so that they know what is it that the do's and the don'ts in terms of protecting the environment. Thank you, Mr. Rosley. I have another interesting question for our colleagues in the Netherlands. How does the Netherlands manage endocrine disrupting compounds, the EDC, in potable water? Any thoughts from our speakers? Maybe Mr. Stefan or Dr. Doris? How does the Netherlands manage endocrine disrupting compounds, the EDC, in potable water?
Yeah, it's a nice question. Thank you. At the moment, there is no current, let's say, legislation on testing all the endocrine disruption, because it's a large group. But in the monitoring program, there is an assay used to detect the effect of those compounds. So it's not the compound itself it's measured, but we measure the effect of the compounds. And it's at the moment we're developing the threshold, because you want to know to what extent this is safe or not. And second, following European legislation, some of the endocrine disrupting compounds will be taken up by the coming revised drinking water directive.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stefan, for the insights. And I can see that Mr. Mark DeRoy, you raised your hand. Would you like to add anything, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, it's when it comes to drinking water, there's a whole series of treating technologies that's being used, especially when we have drinking water from surface water. And overall, we don't see any endocrine disruption anymore in the drinking water itself. So we fully trust that the quality of our drinking water is such a high level that we don't have such effects anymore.
Okay, thank you. I have a question here for Dr. Doris from Dr. Eddie Wong. He is asking regarding the iron electrocoagulation. Beside this infection, what is the typical water quality after the treatment and further treatment of iron sludge generated?
Yeah, so thank you for this question. So iron electrocoagulation has already been applied at a few locations in the Netherlands and elsewhere. And it's typically not applied for disinfection. I think so far it's been applied for, more of the, let's say, the bulk terms. So you can remove, for example, phosphates with it, heavy metals, but also some of the organic micropollutants actually. And I think the main disadvantage at this moment is the sludge that is being produced, which is a lot like the groundwater sludge that I'm investigating. And I think one of the tricks we could play is to use electrocoagulation under certain operating regimes. So having certain, you can have a higher charge dosage, for example, or charge dosing rate, or potentially even operating it under anoxic or anaerobic conditions. And with that, you could also stimulate the formation of specific iron crystals that are more compact. So I think there's still work to do there from the waste generation side. At this point, iron oxides are typically used in industry for making bricks or that kind of applications. So it's possible to use it, but indeed it's a waste stream that has to be dealt with.
Okay, thank you. A question for Engineer Bibi. Can you please talk more on National River Trails, the Denai Sungai Kebangsaan, the DSK program, in which the Ministry of Environment and Water is trying to promote? Engineer Bibi, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, this program, the National River Trails, is actually we are actually engaging a lot with communities, you know, to make sure that they are involved to look after the river behind their houses. It's actually not to go to other places, but actually be within your own area, find a river, because we have a lot of housing areas which is beside the river, and just look after the river. I mean, create like a walkway, a pedestrian walkway, maybe bicycle lane. We can collaborate with government agencies. If the communities are interested, they can come to the government agencies, and we can work together with them to create that. What we want is that the initiative to do something good for the river, you know, so that then when you look at the river and then you feel like you love it and you want to take care of it, and you won't throw rubbish into the river anymore, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Bibi. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems like we have very little time for such Q&A session, but I believe the session today, 4th Water Dialogue, Malaysia and the Netherlands, have given us so much insights on what should be done. And there are a couple of things that I managed to highlight here in my notes. Too much, too little, too dirty of water, which has precedented all of the water issues in both countries, likely Malaysia and also the Netherlands. Our first speaker just now, Mr. Rosli, has shared with us on river water quality monitoring programs under the auspices of the Department of Environment. And then Mr. Mark DeRoy shared hotspots analysis for sewage treatment plant system, NEREDA systems and technologies, new developments on energy recovery. And then, of course, Engineer Bibi shared interesting insights on Malaysia water story and barriers toward having better rivers. And she commented on the River Trails program just now as inspired by the Ministry of Environment and Water, and how might we do cultural transformation in river management. Dr. Doris, of course, with her research background, how might we add value to the quality of discharge water, and how might we reuse nutrients from open sewers, open water bodies, and given some interesting case studies, which is currently being done in India. And of course, Mr. Naren, as the CEO of Malaysian National Sewage Company, he highlighted on the importance of having task forces on states with higher risk, and by providing online monitoring system to detect pollutants and illegal discharges, which in view supporting the IR 4.0 implementation in water, wastewater technologies. And last but not least, Mr. Stefan Kuhls, who explained to us briefly on water quality index to indicate cleanliness level of water and how important it is to have water safety planning in place, which comprises of all the elements such as detection, mitigation, and risk assessment. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank everyone involved in the organization of today's session, the fourth Malaysia-The Netherlands Water Dialogue, and we look forward to having so many more programs throughout the Malaysia International Water Convention 2021. Thank you to Ministry of Environment and Water and Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands for hosting the event today. As your moderator, I wish you a very nice evening ahead. Thank you for our speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you.